Hello, everyone. My name is Cat Oriel with Forbes Breaking News, and today I'm here with Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson, who's now running for governor. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, Kat.
Oh, of course. And so, for those that might be unfamiliar, can you tell me about your background, how it's led you to where you are today, and your run for governor?
Sure. Well, I'm a fourth generation Washingtonian, so my family's been here a long time. And for the past decade or so, I've been the Attorney General for Washington State. And that's given me the opportunity to, be part of the people's law firm that advocates on behalf of Washingtonians to protect them from the Trump administration if it's violating their rights. We won many lawsuits against the Trump administration, to holding opioid distributors accountable for fueling the opioid epidemic and bringing back more than $1 billion to the people of the state of Washington, and standing up for consumers. So on all those issues, it's been a real joy to be Attorney General. But now, as you said, running for governor, we have an open seat here in 2024. It's going to be a close election, but we're really excited about the way the campaign's going.
Was there a turning point when you knew you wanted to run for governor?
That's a great question. Always a little hard to answer. It's never like a moment, but I would say that um, I do believe in general that 12 years is a long, I've been, like I said, Attorney General now for more than a decade. I think 12 years is a long time to serve in any executive role in state government, like Attorney General or like governor. And so part was, while it's very hard to leave the AG's office, I feel like, I had 12 years to lead. I had 12 years to hopefully put my imprint on the office in a way that hopefully is a positive one. And of course, with our current governor, Jay Inslee, deciding not to run for re-election, that created an opening, right, where there was a vacancy in the office. And so it was a logical time to think about that. I'd been AG for 12 years. Now there's a vacancy. And combined with the fact that, our state faces a lot of urgent challenges, and I'm excited to try and address those challenges that we're facing as a state in a different role, which would be governor. And so for a combination of reasons, I think it felt like an exciting time to try and take on this new challenge.
Mhm. And like you've said, you've been in this position for quite a while. So I do want to dig into some of your accomplishments as Washington State AG because there's been so many notable things you've done. You've alluded to it already, but I think a lot of people would be familiar with you for filing a lawsuit back in 2017, challenging the executive order signed by then President Donald Trump, which was dubbed the Muslim ban. So can you talk to me about that lawsuit and how, I guess, did that moment at all change the course of your career trajectory?
Oh, it changed a lot of my life in a lot of ways, I imagine, Kat. And in part because I was the first attorney general to challenge Donald Trump. As you mentioned, that first version of the Muslim travel ban, he signed it within a couple of weeks of being president. And so my team and I filed a lawsuit within just a couple of days. We worked on it over the weekend and filed a lawsuit challenging that first Muslim travel ban and eventually won. We won, it was upheld, and then eventually Donald Trump dropped that one and eventually adopted a more narrow version of the Muslim travel ban. So, for me, I just felt that that executive order was, unconstitutional, obviously, but also I thought a deeply immoral action for a president to take to impact that many individuals. We literally had Washingtonians from those 7 affected countries who were traveling abroad. They were at conferences, at a relative's funeral, and could not come back to their home country, right? Could not come back to Washington State because of that action. So I would say winning that case, it brought a lot of attention to me, it just was a high profile case. And so obviously, yeah, an experience like that, and you find yourself on national TV a lot, and you're going to get more attention. So in a lot of ways, sure, I'm sure it changed my life in some ways. But the most important thing for me and the most important thing for my team is we felt a sense of accomplishment in stopping that first Muslim travel ban that was, like I said, unconstitutional and really I found to be a deeply offensive action.
Yeah, and I noticed a tweet that your campaign put out a few days ago where you talked about also holding the Biden administration accountable for abusing executive authority. I'm less familiar with that. Can you tell me
Yeah.
a little bit what you've done since Biden has become president, and also how you're going to translate these experiences as governor? How would you hold either Biden or Trump accountable if either one is to be reelected?
Sure. So, yeah, as I often say, Donald Trump was not even the first president I filed a lawsuit against. That would have been against Barack Obama's administration. I'm a Democrat. Look, there's no political leader I respect more than Barack Obama, just to be clear. But there is an issue here in Washington State. I'll spare you the details, but there is an issue here in Washington State where a we have what's called the Hanford nuclear waste site. in the central part of our state that's managed by the federal government. It's very dangerous work to try to clean up that nuclear waste and keep it safe, as you might imagine. And workers there have been getting sick on the job site for many years. And after I became Attorney General, I met with those workers and decided the only way to stop the harm that was being caused them for an unsafe work condition was to file a lawsuit against the administration. That happened to be Barack Obama's administration. We won that case, and workers now have a safe work environment. So obviously, through the Trump years, we had a lot of litigation against Donald Trump. We ended up filing Washington State, filed or joined 99 different lawsuits against the administration. We only lost 2 or 3 of those cases. We had a lot of success there. And most recently, with the Biden administration, we have a case that's ongoing that's been successful so far to ensure access to mifepristone. That's the medication used for abortion medication. It's used in more than half of abortions all across the country and here in Washington State. And we filed a lawsuit against the administration saying that they were putting unreasonable restrictions on the access to mifepristone, which is very important in a post-Dobbs world, that medication should be as readily available as any safe product, which it is. And so that's why we filed that lawsuit. And so far, that's been going well. And we've been able to ensure access to individuals here in Washington State to mifepristone. So the litigation against presidents has been significant. I think your follow-up question was, hey, how does that impact me maybe as a governor? I think what I would say is it communicates to voters that I'm willing to stand up to presidents of both political parties for their rights, for their reproductive freedom, for a safe work environment, for their civil rights. I'm willing to do that. And you read a lot about AGs who file lawsuits against presidents, but guess what? It's almost always a president of the opposite political party. I've been equal opportunity in my filings on those cases. And number 2, I think it's important for the people to know that, look, if Donald Trump gets elected again, and I think there's a decent chance of that, we will need a governor who has some experience in standing up to an administration that's trying to take away their rights. And certainly that is an experience I didn't think I'd have when I went to law school, is having a lot of litigation against presidents, but I have. And I think that experience would serve me well if I'm elected governor and Donald Trump is the president of the United States.
You mentioned abortion. I'm sure that'll be part of your next answer, but what do you find the biggest issues are facing Washington State, and what would your main priorities be as governor? And related to that, you're willing to push back against your own party. Do you find that any of your viewpoints differ at all from the mainstream Democratic Party?
Oh, I guess what I would say is, I think that actions sort of speak louder than words. When I first ran for office, Kat, about 20 years ago, I ran against an incumbent Democrat for a local county office. I'm in Seattle right now, and so in King County, I ran against an incumbent Democrat who was chair of the county council, who'd been there for 20 years. That's not the easy way in, to run as a nobody Democrat against an incumbent popular Democrat. I took that incumbent Democrat on and won. And so, I've been willing to go against my party where I think it's the right thing, either politically or filing lawsuits or whatever I think is where my principles lead me. And so I think that's important for voters to know. In terms of the race, the good news in this race is there will be a clear contrast between me and Dave Reichert. Dave Reichert's a former congressman, a Republican, who will almost assuredly be the Republican nominee. And you mentioned choice. He is anti-choice. Our Seattle Times newspaper here refers to him as an anti-choice stalwart. I mean, that's just where he is. And that is not where the overwhelming majority of Washingtonians are. And again, in a post-Dobbs world where reproductive freedom is being taken away state by state by state, the last thing we need in Washington State is to elect a governor who is anti-choice, wants to take away your freedoms. Number 2, to mention Donald Trump again, Dave Reichert's last 2 years in Congress happened to be Donald Trump's first 2 years as president. The good news is there are independent groups that evaluate your voting record when you're in Congress. And more than one of those groups has pointed out that Dave Reichert voted with Donald Trump more than 92% of the time. Just put that in some perspective, that's voting with Donald Trump more often than Mitch McConnell, more often than Ted Cruz, more often than Matthew Gaetz. And so that's a level of extremism that I just, it's going to be my job to make sure that Washingtonians understand that when Donald Trump was president, Dave Reichert lacked the political courage to stand up to him, and in fact, voted with him time after time after time. In contrast, I was the first attorney general to take on Donald Trump and beat him in court many, many times, again, to stand up for the rights of all Washingtonians. So that's a contrast that we'll be emphasizing to the voters as well.
Well, the polls are showing the race is extremely tight between the two of you. So why do you think the polls are so close, given all of the examples that you shared about Reichert and that Washington is a deeply blue state?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because one thing I'm trying to communicate to all my supporters out here is exactly how close I think this race will be. And that's just not me just thinking that. I think it's because we've seen in the past how close those races are. Now, people think of Washington State as this deep blue state. That's not really true. When you look at the last two campaigns for governor in Washington State, where there was no incumbent like this one, so nobody has the advantage of incumbency. In the last two campaigns for governor, in those situations, the total margin of victory for the two Democrats who won is 3 percentage points. In one election, Chris Gregoire, a former attorney general, she won by 133 votes, literally. And our current governor won a very close, hard-fought race by about 3 percentage points. So for me, I just look back at past performance. And when it comes to open seats for governors in Washington State, while yes, it leans blue, those races will be very competitive. And we know that Dave Reichert will have millions and millions and millions of dollars of negative ad spend this campaign. So that's why we're campaigning very hard. I've already been to all 39 counties in the state. We're on a swing back a second time through all 39 counties. I'm the only candidate that's done that. And so we're campaigning very, very hard.
So my last question for you, it is an election year, so I want to ask you about the presidential race as well. We're about a month away from the GOP presidential primary in Washington State. Election officials have already confirmed Trump's name will be on the ballot. What was your reaction to that?
I mean, I can't say I was too shocked by that. Yeah, I know there's obviously we're following closely the legal proceedings that are going on, and so the courts will take care of that. Um, but I have felt honestly for a long, long time that Donald Trump was going to be the nominee of the Republican Party. Look, my mom and dad were Republicans here in Washington State. They were active Republicans, but the party that they were involved in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s is not the Republican Party of today. It's been turned over to Donald Trump and all that he stands for. And so um, that's unfortunate, coming from parents who were very active Republicans. It's sad where that party's gone. And it's going to be my job in this campaign to make very clear to the voters that Dave Reichert has really just been in lockstep with that new Republican Party during his time in Congress. So we expect a close race, but we're excited about what's ahead.
G. Ferguson, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day.